Hi, this is Lisa, Kitchen Tips by Tink. Today I'm going to talk to you about how to make potato refrigerator rolls. This is one of my kids' favorite recipe we have for almost all of our holidays. The first thing you do is you cook potatoes, enough to make 1 cup of mashed potatoes. Use the water from the potatoes in the recipe. And you always want to make sure your water that you mix with yeast is at least 100 to 110 degrees. If you read the yeast package, it always says that on there, not to use hotter water. Sometimes people will not do that and it kills the yeast and your rolls do not raise. So after you get your potatoes mashed, then we start the recipe by checking the water. I've got my Pampered Chef thermometer here. So you want the water to be anywhere from 100 to 110 degrees. And I can tell that's 109. I can tell when it's ready just by touching it, but until you've experienced it, you need to use your thermometer. The first thing we do after we have the potato water and we've got our mashed potatoes is we stir in sugar and salt, our shortening, our eggs, 2 eggs, beat. And our mashed potatoes. And the mashed potatoes also are supposed to be lukewarm, not hot. You don't want to ever add anything hot to your yeast. I'm going to mix just a little bit of this water with my yeast to get it ready. And again, you want it to be the right temperature. Yeast always does better if it sits a little bit before you use it, maybe a minute or 2. You make sure it's all stirred up good. So now we're going to add our ingredients. We've got the sugar, salt, shortening, eggs, and potatoes, and we're going to mix in the mixer. It says to add flour. This is bread flour, and this recipe calls for 7 cups of bread flour. So you mix in a little flour with a little potato water, and a little flour, and a little potato water. I've got my flour measured out, 7 cups. And my potato water was 1.5 cups. And after the dough gets sort of mixed up good and thick, I take off my paddle beater and I use my dough hook. I put the dough hook on. The thing about bread, after you get it all mixed together, you have to let it beat for like 15 minutes just to get a good mix and to get it to be smooth. You have to have a pretty durable mixer to make bread. You can see it's getting pretty thick. It's starting to crawl up the sides. So the first thing I'm going to do is put the mixer down. And I'm just going to switch the beaters. I like to start out with the paddle beater to get everything mixed good. And then the dough hook works better with thick dough. So put in the dough hook. And you can always tell by touch after you've made bread if it's going to be too dry. You have to add just a little water. And I think I need the rest of this water. I got all the eggs over there. And you can see the difference now with the dough hook. It works differently. It's not going off the side anymore. I'm going to set my timer for 15 minutes and let that dough work. I might turn it down just a little bit. And I'll be back with you in a little bit. I forgot to add the yeast. You add the yeast after you add your first cup of flour. I sort of forgot that, so I'm going to add that now. Beating about 10 minutes, and I don't know if you can see, but it's starting to not be in a ball, so I need to add more flour. You want it to be just not sticky, and also you want it to not be sticking to the bowl, you want it to be in a ball. That's how you can tell your dough is the right texture. So I'm going to have to turn it off and use my spatula to scrape the sides. Now you can see after I added the flour, it's not sticking to the sides anymore. It's back to the bowl, and you want it to be a nice round ball. It's got about 4 more minutes to beat yet. Okay, the dough is ready. You take the beater off. And you want to put your dough in a prepared bowl. So I have this bowl that I had my flour in a while ago, and I'm going to put some Pam on there. And you sort of move your bread over there, and if it's a little sticky, you just want to add a little bit of flour. After you get your dough in the bowl, you turn it over, or else just, you want a little bit of that Pam on the top so it doesn't stick to your towel. So maybe just a little, not much. Then you put a damp towel on your bowl, and it's going to go in the refrigerator for 2 to 3 hours before you make the rolls. Sometimes I make the dough ahead of time, the day before, and put it in the refrigerator and make it the next day, but then you have to let it sit out for a while before you can make the rolls. All right. Okay, we're getting ready to make the potato refrigerator rolls. Usually this batch makes 24 rolls. You can make them smaller or bigger, but 24 is a good number. First, I'm going to zero out my scale. Weigh my bowl and zero it. I'm going to see how much my dough weighs. 75. And we're going to do 2 dozen. So I want 12 and each half. So 40, 36, 37, 38. You want to try to get your dough sort of measured to where you know about how many you're going to get, so you know what size to make them. I've done it so much that I don't have to do this, but I'm going to show you how to figure out how. So here you've got 2 37 ounces, and I'm going to chop those in half. So you should be able to get 6 out of each one of these balls. And just so you know about how to do it until you learn, you go ahead and cut that. Okay, so we've got 3 balls of 8. I said 6, I mean 8. Sorry about that. Next thing I do is I sort of work the dough to where it's like a circle, and then I start tucking it under so I have a ball. Use a pinch off the excess, and here's my ball of dough. I'm just going to see how much this one weighs, so to give you an idea. It weighs 4.16 ounces. So that way you sort of know if your rolls are all the same size or not, because see how I sort of pinch it on the bottom? And then when I go, I feel like that one's bigger than the other one. I go ahead and pinch a little bit more off. So they're about the same size. So I work it, pinch it. Some people like their rolls separate, and some people like them to raise so they're one big hunk of rolls. I like mine to raise together, so I put them close, but not just a little bit of space so that when they raise, they connect. Sometimes people try to cut your rolls, and you should just pull them apart instead of cutting them. Because if you cut them, then they're going to get stale if you don't eat them right away. And if you don't know for sure how you're doing, you can always go back and measure. So this one's 5, it's a lot bigger. So you just want to check yourself to try to get it around 4. I tend to make my rolls too big. I don't think they're too big, but my family tells me they're too big. I can eat a meal of just a roll myself, but do what you may. So I try to just keep them all about the same size, and so I started out with like a pancake, and then I hook it together like that, and I pinch off the excess and put that on the bottom. If they think they look too big, I go back and chop a little bit off. So I work it, squeeze it, pull off. And you can check your weight. That's almost 5. I'm going bigger and bigger as I go along. You want to try to have a smooth texture if you can, but until you practice, it's a little tricky. So I work it like this. After I get it in a circle, I sort of squeeze the ends together and pinch off the bottom. Okay, I'll be back in just a minute. We're finishing up our potato refrigerator rolls. This finally, I got 24 out of this batch, and they ended up being around 3 ounces. So that's the magic number, is 3. I've never measured those before, so I wanted to make sure you knew that. After you get them all formed, you give them a dab of butter all around. And then again, they're going to raise double. And then I'll show you the pan after they get done cooking.